Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden, and we're also going to stick to my home county of Skåne here in the very south of the country. And for this review we're going to return to a brewery that you've seen me review a good number of beers from before, but this is a style that I've never tried from them actually, so I have to say I'm very curious to see how this one turns out. For this review then we are going to head up to Helsingborg, kind of in the northwest corner of Skåne, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Brewski Mikrobryggeri, and this must be review number 20 or so that I've done from these guys over the years, probably more. But for this one we are going to have a taste of the board Panda. This one comes in at 11% ABV, and this is an English style barley wine with cocoa nibs and vanilla added to it apparently. So yeah, definitely the first barley wine that I've tried from them. I know they have released one or two of these over the years, but this is the first one I think that they've released through Systembolaget, if memory serves me correctly. They used to mainly just focus on, you know, the fruity IPAs and hazy IPAs and stuff like this, but more recently they have been diversifying a little bit. There's been more kind of pastry stouts in the cake series. There's also been the pie series, the Berliner Weisses, which are very nice, and I would highly recommend that you check those out. But probably the most well-known series of beers that these guys do is the Fiber series, basically a big hazy IPA with different kinds of fruit added into it, and those are very nice. I've reviewed one or two of those for you on the channel over the last couple of years. I do need to look at reviewing more of those for you actually. But yeah, these guys, very well respected brewery, and you know, if these guys had a kind of core range, if you like, I would probably say that one of their beers, one of their IPAs, would be one of the kind of iconic, if you like, one of the famous New England hazy IPAs in Sweden. The best New England hazy that I remember having from these guys would either be Little Big Hoppy or the Conan Double IPA, and I do wish they would bring that back actually. But yeah, very well respected brewery, and probably I think it's fair to say that these guys are the best known Skånsk craft brewery these days. So yeah, definitely curious to try another new style from them, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. My very first barley wine from Brewski Mikrobryggeri up in Helsingborg. So yeah, let's see how we get on then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Brewski Mikrobryggeri. This is review number 20 or so, as I've told you already. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Brewski Mikrobryggeri then, on to my brewery notes. So as I've told you many a time before, Brewski Mikrobryggeri were founded back in 2014, and they're based in Helsingborg in the northwestern part of Skåne here in the south of Sweden. So the founders of the company are Marcus Hjalmarsson, Johan Britsen, Alfred Olsen and Robin Skoglund, and all of these guys were really inspired to get into craft beer, having tried the West Coast American beers. They did a little bit of home brewing and decided to start up their own company. But Marcus was originally associated with the High Nose brand of beer that's brewed up at Helsingborg Brewery, again to the northwest of Helsingborg, out on the Kullaberg Peninsula. Very pretty, and again I recommend that you go and visit there if you get the chance. But some of those High Nose beers are still brewed up there, and the original Brewski beers were brewed in the Helsingborg Brewery as well. But these days they're brewed now at their own brewery, which you'll find in the old train yard to the south of the central station in central Helsingborg. But this brewery has a capacity to produce around 100,000 litres of beer per month, but I don't think they are using it to its full capacity as it stands. But in 2016 they also started their own beer festival, which is called Brewskival. They had over 40 different brewers in the first year, and this has continued year on year. I first went in 2017, and I think that year they had about 60 breweries. And it's grown year on year. It was cancelled this year for 2020 of course, but I've been there from 2017 to 2019, and hopefully we can go there in 2021 as well. But they also used to open up the brewery once a month as a bar and called it Barski, but they now have their own bar in Helsingborg right in the centre of the town, which goes by the same name, and this opened back in 2018. If you go there you'll get some really nice ramen. It's not authentic ramen, right enough, it is tasty, but it's made by an American chef. They've got like chicken ramen and things, and as I say, very good, but not authentic Japanese ramen, if you like. But these days they now also brew some of their IPAs over at Tampa Bay Brewing Company in Florida, and at the moment they're looking to open up a bar in Oslo in Norway as well. And Marcus has started a distribution company up there called Brewski, which is used to import Swedish beers into Norway. I'm not sure if they have got some of their things going through Vinmonopolet yet, which is the Norwegian equivalent of Systembolaget, state-owned alcohol stores, but I dare say that will probably happen in the future. But probably for the moment it's just going to local bars and craft beer bars and things like that, which is pretty cool. But over the course of 2019 these guys produced around 500,000 litres of beer in total, and as of November 2020, when I'm reviewing this beer for you, they've produced around 310 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and that number is always rising, of course. So if it's 310 beers, you're talking over the course of it's about 50 beers a year these guys have been producing. So yeah, pretty much one new beer a week, and you do often get new beers as part of the local Småskaligt releases from Brewski. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you for the moment about Brewski Mikrobryggeri. There's always new things to add from these guys, but hopefully we can get them on the channel at some point for a Meet the Brewery segment. But it's kind of a mixture at the moment. The whole COVID-19 situation is making things a bit weird, plus it's the winter and I kind of can't be bothered doing going out and about so much during the winter here in Sweden. But yeah, it is what it is. But yeah, you will hopefully see these guys on a Meet the Brewery segment at some point in the future. I do need to film a few more of those when I get the chance. But yeah, that's all I can tell you about Brewski for the moment. As I say, if you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. And like I said, I recommend that you check out the pie series, the triple berry pie, the strawberry pie, raspberry dragon fruit. There's some really good ones in there. And I also recommend that you check out the Cake Pastry Stout series. The Fever series is their more kind of classic thing, the big fruity IPAs. And if you do ever see Conan Double IPA, tell me first, and then try it for yourself, because that's one of my favourite beers that I've ever had from this. A bit of a shame that that one didn't become a regular, because I thought that was really top class actually. But as we always say, beer is subjective and different people like different things. But check out some of the Brewski beers if you are interested in Swedish beer. And of course these guys, probably the best known Skånsk craft brewery at the moment. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer then. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. So as you can see, it is a little bit different compared to some of the other beers that we've had from Brewski in the past. The artwork is just slightly different. Trying to figure out exactly what this guy is, what the Panda is supposed to be saying. I don't know if it's meant to be a Swedish swear word. In Scotland, of course, if it's a 5-letter swear word, it's likely to be shite. But yeah, who knows. But yeah, nicely presented this one. There you can see the data kind of side of the beer too, and there you can see little Brewski man at the bottom of the label there. But yeah, an 11% English style barley wine, this one, with cocoa nibs and vanilla. So yeah, it's supposed to be an English style barley wine apparently. This one is a 330ml can, and I can't remember what I paid for this. I would suspect it would have been around 50, maybe even 60 Swedish kroners. At 11% ABV, this one is a little bit of a beast, but certainly not the strongest of barley wines that you're going to come across. But as I said, my very first one from Brewski, and I think I forgot to mention earlier that this beer was released as part of the local Småskaligt assortment for October of 2020, and I think the exact date might have been the 2nd or 3rd of October that this beer was released. So yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. 330ml can. Oh, didn't quite get that up in the right way there. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Curious to see what this one has in store for us. So yeah. Oh, that does look very nice actually. Quite a bit of carbonation visible on this one, I have to say. Ooh, that's quite interesting. So yeah. You can see this beer poured with somewhere between 1/4 and 1/3 finger of a frothy, I would say kind of light foamy colour, kind of beigey coloured head there. There's 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, but it's just faded away to be a little thin foamy layer, and there's a nice little bit of a foamy ring just around the edge of the glass there. But yeah, a few big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of that head there. But you know, overall it does look pretty nice, I have to say. If we shine the light through it, this beer is a lovely dark kind of ruby colour. And you know, with barley wines, when it comes down to it, these guys are related to the double IPAs. So basically, as you change the malt to hop ratio, you have pale ale, then you've got IPA, double IPA, and then barley wine. So you know, these beers are all related through that that malt to hop ratio. But this one has a lovely, very, very dark kind of burgundy, ruby type colour to it. Actually, it's almost, if you put the light through it, it's almost the same colour as the Heart of Midlothian football shirt, or Hearts as we would call them back home. Not sure how good a reference that is for Swedish people, but yeah, lovely burgundy, maroon, ruby kind of colour this beer. You can see the head has just faded away. This colour is not exactly, you know, it's not exactly surprising for a barley wine. You can get them in all different shapes and sizes and colours. Some of them would be a little bit more mahogany than this. Some of them can be very rich and ruby. But yeah, each to their own, as we say. But yeah, normally the colour of these beers is determined, one, by the type of malts that they use, and two, how long the boil is, because that means that the sugars caramelise a bit more. If memory serves me correctly, usually barley wines have at least like a 4 to 5 hour boil. I think they can obviously have a bit more than that. I think I've heard of beers having like 8-hour boils and stuff to kind of caramelise the sugars in the mash and things like that. So yeah, kind of crazy. But yeah, certainly looks the part, this one. My first barley wine from Brewski. Let's have a closer look at the aroma and just see how we get on. Ooh, that smells really nice actually. That's a big sweet aroma. I was not expecting that. You can really smell the vanilla out of this straight away. This one, I was not expecting that. This one is almost like on the same level of sweetness as the cake series that they have, and the pie series. It's really got that kind of almost pastry type thing about it. Is this meant to be like a pastry barley wine or something? That's interesting. But yes, certainly it's very, very sweet. Did not expect that from this at all. And you know, people had told me this was quite a quirky beer, and you know, from the aroma, I've got a feeling that they're going to be right. Not that anyone would lie to me, of course, but yeah. This one, that's really unusual. I mean, straight away with this beer, it's the vanilla, that kind of candied vanilla sort of thing that just jumps out straight away. It's really interesting that it does smell like a kind of cream cake or something. So cream cake, vanilla, that's what comes out of this beer straight away, and you've got those sweet kind of milky chocolatey notes in there as well. Did not expect that at all from this one. But yeah, it almost smells the same as some of these kind of pastry milk stouts or something like that. It really is like that. Yeah, did not expect that. So yeah, just pay attention to that. There's a lot of juicy, fruity characters coming out of this one as well, but we'll come back to that in a little bit. So the malty side of this beer then, you can feel a little bit of a kind of brown bready character, which is kind of sitting underneath this one, which is quite interesting. How would you say? The brown bready notes from this one are really, really quite interesting. I mean, you can smell straight away with this beer, there is a little bit of that kind of brown, it's almost like a rye bread actually, like a wholemeal brown rye bready sort of thing. It comes across as almost quite thin in that sense. The bread isn't too thick in this one, but on top of that you get these lovely big brown sugars, and the brown sugars are actually quite well balanced. You do have a little bit of that kind of thicker, treacly molasses sort of thing, but then you've got quite a lot of brighter brown sugar in there, like a straight up sweet caramel, a little bit of a toasty caramel, and also some kind of McVitie's digestive biscuits in it as well, which is quite interesting. So yeah, but on top of that, you can really smell, you get the vanilla and that almost kind of cream cakey sort of thing just sitting on top of those brown sugars. But in the middle of your nose you can really smell it's like a kind of powdered chocolate. It's like if you stick your nose into, for the Swedes, the oh boy, the hot chocolate mix kind of thing, or you know, it's like putting your nose into some of this Nesquik powder and stuff and smelling it. That's the kind of notes you get from the cocoa nibs in this beer. But it's definitely, it almost just smells like a pastry barley wine or something, this beer. It's really interesting that. This is not what I would have expected at all, to be quite honest with you. But yeah, it's a lovely smelling beer that. It caught me by surprise, But I think this one is really interesting, and a lot of people told me this is quite a damn quirky beer, and I see exactly what they mean just on the aroma. On the hoppy side of things though, there's a little touch of earthiness. You get a wee touch of a herbal note as well. There's a little bit of floral character in there, but to be honest with you, I don't find this beer smelling kind of dank and bitter as some barley wines can be, but you do get a little bit of grassiness, and there's quite a bit of complexity to the fruity side of this beer as well, I have to say. So yeah, this one for me is quite the fruity side of this beer is really interesting. You do get a little bit of that kind of sharp cherryish note. Yeah, there is a really there is a little bit of a cherryish note to this one. You've got some juicy plums in there, but I think there's a lot of figgy character to this, and you do get a wee bit of a sharper kind of blackberryish note at the front of the nose there. That's really interesting. Yeah, I do wonder if this is Bramlin's Cross that's in here, because you do get a little bit of that kind of datey, pruny sort of thing out of this beer. I mean, there could be a little bit of the Northern Brewer too, which is the popular hop to use in Germany for Doppelbock. These are two hops that really give you some very nice red fruity notes. Bramlin's Cross from England, and I think they're grown in Kent. But then yeah, you get the Northern Brewer from Germany as well. But yeah, these ones. The aroma out of this is the fruity side is really interesting. As I say, sharp cherries for me, a little bit of a juicy plum, good little bit of kind of a lighter figgy note, and then a little bit of a blackberry blackcurranty sharpness in there. So yeah, it's an interesting one, this, I have to say. I do wonder, maybe it is Northern Brewer. It could be American hops like Eureka or something would be the other one in there. That's got some really lovely berry characters, and that might be the one that's giving you just a little bit of sharpness, because I don't think they added any fruits into the beer here with this one. But yeah, really quite interesting, I have to say. Interesting aroma to this one, so definitely take a little bit of time and enjoy that before you get stuck into it. But we're going to have a taste of this beer now and just see how we get on. So this one is the Bored Panda, an 11% barley wine, English style barley wine from what I gather, from Brewski Mikrobryggeri in Helsingborg in Skåne here in the very south of Sweden. So let's get stuck into this one. Slanja, skål, cheers. Very curious about this. Oh, now that is nice, but I'm going to tell you straight away, this is really, really quirky. But it's a beautiful beer. The way everything goes together in that is just really, really nice. It's one of these beers that's quite complex, and just everything just goes together really very nicely, I have to say. Oh yeah. I don't even know where to start with this, but I'm going to give it a thumbs up straight away. If Brewski can do barley wines like this, I'm disappointed that they haven't done more of them over the years, and they haven't released more of them. That's the real kind of tragedy. That's the real elephant in the room here, is that Brewski should have done more of this beer style when they've had the opportunity. But yeah, the flavour of this is lovely, I have to say. So where do we go with this one then? So straight away with this beer, you do get a little bit of that kind of very slightly bready malt. That just blankets the middle of your palate. You can feel that forming the backbone of the beer. So straight away that's in there. But yeah, the thing is, you're going to notice on top of that breadiness, and if you go towards the back third of your palate, you will get slightly more kind of toasty, bread crusty note off the beer. But what you're going to notice is that after you take a sip of this one, the middle of your palate really sweetens up very, very quickly. So you get that toasty, kind of grainy, brown bready sort of thing in there. And like I said, it's quite thin. It's not a really thick brown bready note. But then you'll find that the middle of your palate just kind of, it becomes a little bit more oily and wet, and then the whole beer just sweetens up actually, which is really very, very nice. So if you go towards the back third of your palate then, as I say, you do get a little bit more graininess out of this beer, and then as you move further forward again, you can feel it sort of sweetens out a little bit at that. On the kind of, if you go to that border between the middle third of your palate and the back third, what you'll notice is some of the really toasty elements of the brown sugar start to come out there, and I think there's a little bit of that dry, powdery chocolate sitting on top of that as well. So the back third of your palate does have a little bit of dryness, both from roasty brown sugars and from a little bit of the kind of, what I would guess is the kind of cocoa nibs that are in this one. But yeah, then as you move into the middle third of your palate, you definitely get more. On top of that kind of bready base layer, you definitely get more of a big oily brown sugary character out of this one, which is very, very nice, I have to say. So yeah, for me, this beer, it's almost, there's something in my head wants to say there's a little bit of an almost marzipan type element to this. I'm not sure what the Americans, I'm sure, call marzipan something different, but yeah, it really has just an almost element of marzipan in the middle of the palate there. It does have a big kind of cakey element to it. The more that you drink of this beer, I would say, the more that you drink of this beer, the more I would say that it has it does develop a little bit of a cakiness. It's almost like a kind of brandy soaked cake kind of thing that you get out of this beer the further you go into the aftertaste. But like I say, bready, it's a light kind of brown bready layer on this one. Then you get a bit of an oily brown sugar in this. You go into the very centre of your palate, you get that very, very thick treacle molasses sort of thing. And as you move further out towards the edge, it does sweeten up a little bit, and then you get the more kind of biscuity, grainy notes in there. But in fairness, you do get a little bit of that really toasty brown sugar to this one as well. And I think the thing you'll also notice is that some of that kind of dry, powdery chocolate just kind of starts to emerge from under that. It actually starts out that you've got the bready base, then the brown sugars, but then I think what you almost get underneath is like a layer of that powdery chocolate kind of coming out there. You do find this beer does dry out a little bit for me, and that's when you get the more roasty brown sugars and the powdery chocolate flavour. So it's interesting how it goes together in these different parts of the palate. You do get an element of that kind of pastry sort of thing, that kind of, those pastry type beers. You do get an element of that in the middle of the palate there, and you'll notice that in the middle of your palate it does continue to sweeten the further that you go into the aftertaste. So yeah, some of the vanilla comes out of this one, and you get a bit of vanilla right in the centre of your palate, but then if you go to the front corners of your palate and move diagonally back, then you get a little bit more of that as well. So it's interesting in that sense, I have to say. So yeah, there is an element of that kind of pastry type thing going on in the middle of the palate, and I think that pastry element that the beer has, it almost evolves to be a little bit more like a kind of marzipan flavour, which is quite interesting. I wouldn't have expected that at all, but I can definitely see, we've covered the malt base quite in depth now, and I can see why people would say this is quite a quirky beer. You will also notice one or two nutty elements coming out of this beer as well, but this one's a very, very nice sipper, I have to say, and it does get a thumbs up from me. It's a nice beer, and it gets a thumbs up as well in terms of the creativity, and this is what Brewski can do. In some ways, I might argue that Brewski have played it a little bit safe with their beers. They've always stuck with Berliner Weisses and the New England sort of hazy and fruity IPAs until quite recently, and fair enough, that's what the guys like. But when they're this capable, when they're capable of producing barley wines and stuff like this, why not diversify? And in fairness to them, they have been doing that recently with Hefeweizens, with different kind of stouts, the pie series, the cake series and stuff like this. It's really good to see Brewski starting to produce more different kinds of beer, and the malty side of this beer I think is very, very interesting. It's difficult to say whether I would classify this one as an English barley wine or an American one. It definitely has a bit more of the kind of roasty toasty character to it that you would expect of the English barley wine, and a little bit more of that kind of medicinal sort of thing. But then again, the sweet side of it does show a little bit of American character as well. So I think it's difficult to choose exactly whether this one should be an English or whether it should be an American one, because it's got elements of both. Probably best just to stick with the term barley wine. But anyway, onto the hoppy side of the beer then. Back corners of the palate, you do have just a little touch of earthiness there, and as you move further forward along the sides of the palate, you'll get a little bit of a kind of herbal quality there, and as you reach the front corners of the palate, that's when you get a little bit of that nice kind of, there is a nice little touch of a floral aromaticity coming out of this beer. Then round the very front curve of the tongue, you get that lighter grassy note out of the beer. The green side of the hops for me are not overly present in this one. There is something that's telling me this could well be Bramling's Cross or Northern Brewer that's in this one. But again, as I say, Eureka is another potential bet on this. But let's look at the fruity side of this beer then, because this is where I think this one does get quite interesting as well. So yeah, when you take this beer in, It's not, I think I was wrong in the aroma when I said cherries. It really is a little bit more kind of plummy. But what you're going to notice, as I always say to you, the fruity part of the beer comes out on that front third of your palate. You get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. If you go to that border area between the middle third and your front third of your tongue, there's definitely a little bit of that kind of, it's almost like when you take that bit of cake off the baking tray, it's got that roasty kind of cakey dryness to it. But then as you move further forward from that, you will start to get some really juicy plummy notes out of the beer. What you can also feel forming the base of that fruity part of the beer is a real dryness. It's almost like a kind of really well-fired brown sugar and a little bit of that dry chocolatey sort of thing, that dry powdery chocolate. But yeah, on top of that you've got a nice oily, you've got a really nice oily, how do you say, you've got a nice kind of oily kind of plummy note to it. Then as you move further forward, it gradually becomes a little bit more raisin-like. There is, when you take this beer in, there is definitely a little bit of that kind of raisin kind of sharpness there. But then as you move further forward, definitely a little bit more figgy. And as you reach the kind of front part of that front third of your tongue, you really get some nice blackcurranty and blackberry-ish flavours coming out of this beer. So this one is a very, very interesting beer, I have to say, and I like how I do like how this whole thing goes together actually. So it gets a big thumbs up from me, this one. I really like what Brewski have pulled off with this. The fruity side of the beer, it's got a nice little bit of sharpness to it, and that offers a wee bit more kind of contrast, if you like, to the almost kind of pastry-like nature of the malt base. So this one is almost just like a kind of pastry barley wine. I've never had a barley wine quite like this one, and you know, that's what we like on the channel. We do like beers that are going to test our palate and teach us a little bit of something. So yeah, this one I think should be really very interesting. So I think it'll be very interesting to most people, I should say. Brain's not working, but yeah, big thumbs up to Brewski for me, and I look forward to seeing what other kind of beers they come out recently. I'd love to see how Brewski would do some lager beers actually. I'd love to see these guys, you know, do some pilsners and some doppelbocks, or maybe even a Scotch ale or something. That would be really interesting to see these guys do something like that, because like I say, they're very capable when they try something a bit different. So yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel then, what are we going to say about this one? This one, I'd say this is sort of top end of mid-bodied, bottom end of full body. It's got quite a bit of slickness to it, this beer. So yeah, very, very smooth carbonation. The mouthfeel is quite oily, but I think the dryness in this beer that it has from that kind of powdery chocolate and some of the well-fired brown sugars, it does make the beer just seem a little bit lighter. It's a very slick, oily kind of mouthfeel that this one has. Definitely not the thickest of beers that I've come across, but then again, the barley wine, I don't remember barley wines being madly thick, to be honest with you. They usually are quite slick and quite oily in that sense, so it fits what you'd expect. In terms of bitterness and stuff like this, this one does have a wee bit of bitterness from the brown sugars and the chocolatey notes, the kind of dry powdery chocolate that you have. But there is a wee bit of hoppy bitterness in there. I'd be tempted to say this one might be about 40 IBUs, potentially even a little bit more. But you know, my IBU counts, that's probably the least accurate part of my beer reviews, to be honest with you. I can mix those up quite badly, I have to say. So yeah, don't take my word as gospel in terms of the IBU count. But I would guess about 40, maybe even 50 I'd push for this one. But yeah, malt base, nice little bit of, it has a nice little bit of breadiness to it, lots of brown sugars, bit of a kind of dry aspect as well, but it does get sweeter and almost kind of more pastry-like the further you go into the aftertaste. You do get a few sweet nutty notes out of this beer the further that you go as well. Nice little bit of hoppiness, some nice juicy fruits, but overall this is a very, very solid barley wine and quite different to other ones that I've reviewed before. So thumbs up to Brewski for doing something quite quirky with this beer. I think they've pulled off something really, really nice with this one. So have a go at this for yourself and see what you think. I think this is one of the quirkier beers that I've had from Brewski in recent times. So yeah, give it a go. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This was a really interesting one to review, and I'm glad that I picked this one up. So have a go at it for yourself and just see what you think. But yeah, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Brewski Mikrobryggeri. We will return to these guys at some point in the fairly near future. They're always releasing new beers, but this was a really interesting one, and I hope that you guys enjoyed my take on this beer as well. So yeah, let's leave it there. Thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out Brewski Mikrobryggeri, and I'll catch you guys later. This one was the Bored Panda, and 11% barley wine with cocoa nibs and vanilla added to the brew from Brewski Mikrobryggeri in Helsingborg here in Skåne in the south of Sweden. Slange, skål, cheers.